Alrighty, the Enigma and the energetic Enigma of Crystals, episode 5. Welcome, everybody. So, just going right into it. Just giving you guys a nice little perspective on what we're going to be talking about tonight. Starting off, as we normally do, what is a crystal and what purpose does it serve in the natural world? So, no better person to explain that would be Junk. Would you like to start us off this evening?
Yes, of course. And I'd just like to welcome everybody back from our Halloween series. It was very interesting, very fun. Thank you, Scuba, for putting on that. And we love the costumes. And also, the costume contest, I believe, is it concluded or is it still going on right now?
It is concluded, and my answer will be given out Saturday, November 5th.
Perfect. Okay, well, jumping into tonight, we are going to be talking about, just as you heard before, the energetic enigma of crystals. And to create a really good foundation for this conversation, I think we should look to some bright minds and their personal quotes about crystals themselves. So, firstly, we have one from the late great Nikola Tesla, which basically states, "In a crystal, we have clear evidence of the existence of a formative life principle. And although we cannot understand the life of a crystal, it is nonetheless a living being." So, and then also we have another one from Walter Russell, which states, "Matter registers its energy through temperature, dimension of heat, and cold in solids of light, which man calls crystals. Crystals are but apparent solids of light, sustained in that illusion of appearance by motion." So to answer the question simply, crystals are frozen light. And it's hard to wrap your head around that concept initially, but when we start to dive in and you actually dissect the insides of a crystal, you'll see how powerful they truly are just as a static nature presence. And I think Nikola Tesla was alluding to crystals actually having their own consciousness. So that's going to be a really fun, rabbit hole to jump into. But on the surface level, a crystal is essentially a mineral produced by the planet. So it's not man-made, it's very natural, and it has some very mysterious qualities in which we'll dive into.
So, to kind of add on to that, what is a first density being in terms of a crystal?
Well, see, we get into the evolution of consciousness at this point, which is life manifest, specifically within the physicality of this third dimension. First density being, essentially, in a nutshell, because this is a very grand conversation, you begin as the elements and then move into a more tangible part of nature itself until you slowly develop self-awareness through the hierarchy of the animal kingdom and humankind. So reverting all the way back to the beginning, we have the first density beings, which are timeless by nature. These are static representations of the elements, but also very powerful energetic sources of light. And it's absolutely beautiful, because when you start to consider that these things aren't just, paperweights, they actually have a functioning cognition, it changes your whole perspective of what reality is. It gives you that extra level that you need to really enhance your own perception through the observation of crystals themselves.
Absolutely. How can a rock be used as a tool for development if it's perceivability? I think I butchered that. Oh, thank you. Perceivability or does not do much of anything. So what I'm basically trying to ask, and I butchered that saying, and I apologize. What I'm basically trying to ask is, we physically see it as a rock. we physically see it as a, a stone that, is static. It has a general weight, has a general shape. It's not, I can't hold it in my hand and I can't make something levitate. How does something like this, can be, how does something like this can be used as a tool? How do we distinguish, this from a mineral? And one of the big things that you have to look at when talking about a crystal and, its different properties is, its color, its, you know, hardness, as well as, is it associated with anything? Is there any specific, history and understanding behind this crystal? And as we have before you, we have, different charts and different, measure different ways to measure this. Junk, would you like to go into this a little bit more?
What?
Can I
Yeah.
add on to what you were saying real
Go
quick?
for it. Go for it.
Um, so yeah, to kind of back up what he was saying about the colors, and the associations that they might have, before we get into chakras, you know, to kind of address the question, how do we associate these crystals with the chakras or with their certain properties? And that's all about the energy, the vibration that they hold. But from, I guess, the elementary perspective, um, we in our universe, not just humans in our bodies, but everything that is matter, is essentially vibrating in a certain wavelength, right? And So when you get down to like the smallest molecular level, you get past the atoms, you go past the quarks. That's why when scientists do their mainstream kind of experiments with the Hadron Collider and stuff, they're always finding smaller, smaller, and more fundamental particles. Is because um, they're looking at like particles. But when you get to the quantum level, that's where those particles don't become little uh, individualized bits of matter, but becomes waveforms of energy. And to describe that in layman's terms, you can kind of think of our matter, our bodies, or anything else around you holds a frequency, just like a radio station, but on a quantum level. And that's essentially what dictates. That's what makes, you know, that bookcase a bookcase. It's because the quantum, on the quantum level, those atoms are vibrating uh, on a frequency that gives its shape to the carbon atoms and that holds it together, and so on and so forth. Um, and so that's when you really get into like sacred geometry and all that kind of stuff. But the crystals will have their own properties, their own vibrational properties that will hold a more stable, um, I guess, vibrational match to each one of those properties. For instance, you could have a crystal that holds a vibrational match to, let's say, openness and feeling and kindness, and it might resonate with the heart chakra. And it so happens that the crystal is green, uh, and that's not just a coincidence. Why we associate certain colors with the chakra, and then the stones happen to be like that, um, is because the light passes through the crystal and it bounces off. The light, it really goes into the divine kind of formation of the universe, um, when you really get into it, because the light reflects. The green is what's reflected by the atoms, and that's what causes the color. And so there really is a really cool association, uh, not just, I guess, metaphorically, but actually on a scientific and quantum level. So these aren't just physical objects, but they hold certain frequencies that you can tap into through your own spiritual body and your physical body. Um, but yeah, Junk, take it away.
Well, I think when kind of discerning the tool aspect of a crystal, not a rock, a crystal, um, I understand why you did that, but basically, you have to see that crystals aren't just kind of centralized in the spiritual community. They're used all throughout the world. I mean, if you look at something as simple as a quartz crystal, these are known for storing memory, basically the essential component in every single computer around the world. And some other ones that I do want to mention, because I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but some technology that utilizes crystals include LCDs, liquid crystal displays, sonar, high voltage power, watches, purification, record players, clocks, microphones, inkjet printers, grills, microprocessors, solar cells, ultrasound machines, radios, and the list keeps going on.
An
And that
average life.
yeah. And it's interesting too, because like they're used especially for their electrical properties
Yep.
and different little small electrical charges that they can produce, which is why when you create a small spark in your lighter or your gas grill, you're going to get that kind of crystalline activation.
And
And
it's kind of that tick, 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 tick. It's the crystal actually trying to ignite within the gas and within the propane tank, or not within the propane tank, but at the, igniting point. Like on a stove, a gas stove, when you hear it tick, 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 that is the piezoelectric quartz having pressure put on it for the electric, igniter spark to create the flame.
I think even our cell phones, I don't know if all of them use it, but a lot of them use sapphire in the screen.
Wow.
so, yeah, I think I want to double on what Xenox was saying briefly earlier about, different crystals having a vibrational property. And that vibrational property correlates to a frequency, and that frequency correlates with such things as the chakras, as you're seeing before you. So, again, all of the properties do play a part in their specific purpose, but more or less, crystals really do help heal us. And it's powerful to think that, the future of medicine is vibrational. It's not pharmaceutical. It's just something that we really need to tap into our frequency range to heal. And yeah.
And one of the best ways to understand and tap into that frequency is to very much understand the geometry that the crystal that you have actually has, because that's going to be its physical vibration for you to recognize and understand outside of what color it's associated with. So, like, for instance, I have an Amazonite. I basically have a tiny obelisk. Its shape is very similar. It may not be a square, but it's very, very obelisk in nature. So, that specific shape is going to give off a very specific, vibration and frequency, regardless of what type of, crystal it is. Although it has those specific properties, of geometry is very, very, very important. Does anybody want to add on to that one?
Just briefly, it really does follow the Platonic solids, if anybody's familiar with those. On a very fundamental level, they're all based on that. And what's interesting is that crystals manifest outwardly. So you're going to see spires, you're going to see different, maybe cellular purities that grow out macrocosmically to kind of reveal the inner structure. So what's interesting that you're seeing right here is how perfectly organized crystals are. comparative to glass. I mean, you could say they look similar, but just compare the quantum level. And what's fascinating about this atomic structure, as you're seeing to the left and right, these are real images of a quartz crystal. And what you're seeing is that it contains, especially when you start to really focus in on it, it contains billions of tetrahedrons that are seamlessly connected. And if you look at any triangle on this chart and you blink your eye, you'll see a three-dimensional tetrahedron actually appear. And it's the connection between the larger tetrahedrons with the smaller ones. Again, as Enoch said, going all the way down to the quantum level, which basically reveals that there is a universality of sacred geometry from the macro to microcosm, that you can't disprove this, that nature is almost perfect in some regard. And I think it's absolutely beautiful because the electron fields that you're seeing are constant. So for anybody, this is for the skeptics out there, for anybody who thinks a crystal is just a rock, truly hasn't interfaced with one, let alone done research to see what they're really made of. Because these are powerful little packs of energy that are specifically attuned to focalizing energy for our greatest use, and also the environment as well. And we'll definitely jump into that a little bit, but I just wanted to say that basically a crystal vibrates at 32,768 seconds, only furthering the argument that it is frozen light. And it's just powerful to think that these things are birthed from the earth. I mean, we'll get into the raw crystals in a minute, but absolutely impeccable.
I was gonna say, it's real simple, but just imagining these things are grown. Oh, I don't know if all of them are, but a lot of crystals are grown from the earth, quite literally. So, it's not just something you make like glass, not to put down anything that's artificially made, but all of that science and sacred geometry, really down to the molecular level, as we just saw in the picture, is really amazing.
Absolutely. Do crystals help cleanse the chakras? And do pentagrams formed by crystals do anything? So, one of the big things that I have personally noticed in a lot of, crystal shops and, different spiritual areas is that they'll have a very specific sheet of paper with an outline of a shape, kind of just printed out, and then they'll put crystals on very specific points on that sheet of paper, or they'll just do it on a mirror, or they'll do it in a very, I want to say, not sacred, but very comfortable space. And they lay them out very specific. And one thing that I've always personally wondered, and is that actually doing that anything, or is that just me, feeling comfortable in the situation, feeling, safe, and, I'm feeling a nice placebo. But, that would be me, I would say, 7 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago. And now I go into a crystal shop and I'm like, wow, this place is powerful. This place is set up nice, because, there's a very interesting tickle you feel if it's just right. If it's tuned just right, you feel the tickle right on the base of your spine. And I don't know if it's just me, but I'm very specific about that nowadays. So, Junk, do you want to add on to that one?
I was gonna say,
Okay, whoa, you're too slow. You got to talk, man.
sorry, I had a lot of feedback going. I was gonna say that someone might experience it in a different type of way. I don't know if I necessarily feel a tingle in my spine, but I feel like in my overall energy and body, more uplifted. So that's something I definitely notice. I might even feel like more clarity, like a weight's been lifted off of my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It when it comes to attuning yourself with crystals, it is something that most everybody can do, but I think you do have to consciously and emotionally be open to it. Otherwise it's going to be more difficult. And you might not notice it.
Yeah, I want to preface this by saying also that we heal ourselves. Crystals are just tools to facilitate the process. And also, when you were mentioning earlier about crystal grids, the very interesting facet about it is that crystals themselves, although almost as imperceivable as our own aura, do produce this kind of toroidal field of energy. So pairing them in a group, specifically as they do within sacred geometry outlines, could have some positive healing effect. It can create, if you could imagine, like a four-dimensional geometry field that kind of connects the intersecting points of the apex, as well as the inner looping effect. So, in that regard, yes, they could be powerful, but it's all about how you practice with them. Like if you're not used to it or you don't know what you're doing, I would probably stay away from it and just interface with them one on one.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do know and you're feeling energy and you're going for it, yeah, make the most of it, because I've seen some powerful grids out there too, and it's all benevolent. I honestly don't think that crystals can have the shotgun effect. I think they're pretty much in a good way positively charged for that sake of healing. So
No, yeah,
oh
I think
yeah,
they're way too stable for it to be like a shotgun, like you just took like 5 milligrams of mushrooms or something like that. It's really something that's grounding, and it really shows in the form that the universe has given us, and it's this, crystal rock form, this tough, solid form that's manifested here in our universe. But it's just that these solid forms give us a stable vibrational frequency that we can literally and figuratively hold on to and attune ourselves to.
So something that uh, our good, lovely Junk here provided with slides that I didn't even think about, and that is cleaning and cleansing your own crystals. Because one thing that we must understand is, although these tools are very powerful, they are not infinite. They need a break too. They need healing too. They need, a charge up in their batteries. So, very basic things that you can do, like throwing it in the sun for a few hours, putting it out in a full moon, and, bathing with it, and, really connecting with it in that experience, saging your house, getting sound bowls. And this one, now this last one, I have personal mixed feelings about, because in my opinion, it's kind of a cop out to buy a crystal to heal other crystals. I feel as though that is more of like a personal ritualistic type thing that you would have to do versus just getting a piece of cellulite. I That's just me. That's just me. Junk, would you like
Uh,
to, or Xenox, go for it?
I feel like selenite. Well, from what I've heard, I don't have too much experience with it. A lot of people always, uh, what's the word? They swear by it that it's self-cleansing. It's a self-cleansing crystal, and it purifies itself and other crystals. So that's why it's on there. But one thing I think is missing is water. We forgot water on that list. But Junk, go ahead since it's your list.
no, that was actually a perfect segue. So the thing is this is where it gets tricky, right? Is that yes, crystals need cleansing, because what you need to realize is that the more you use it, the more it familiarizes itself with your energy, and also vice versa. If you go to a shop, chances are a crystal that you have picked out, and we'll talk about the process, but a crystal that you've chosen might have been touched by hundreds of people, might have been influenced by a lot of energies that aren't your own. So, especially in that regard, it's good to cleanse them. And the thing about water is that some of these crystals are not water soluble and some are. And what that means is that they have a tendency to dissolve in water, which could be dangerous. You don't want your crystal, dying on you. So basically, you think about like crystals like obsidian that can break in too hot or too cold of water. Turquoise can fade in the water. Some can flake apart. Some can dissolve. Hematite can rust.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, you have to be very careful. It's a process, and it's all about care, because I like to equate crystals to family, and it's something that you really have to take good care of. And I would suggest all these other things, but also the sun too could be a little bit damaging. So really do your research on whatever crystal you choose to charge up and cleanse. The moon is pretty, neutral, but when we talk about the sun and water, very, very careful with those elements, because they can do more harm than good at times.
I'd say even sage in a sound bowl would be pretty neutral as well. In my opinion, at least. Moving on. How are crystals mined / cut, and how can we protect ourselves from this aspect of the mineral industry? So this is something that, I only recently started to understand, and that is a lot of crystals that are put in crystal stores are unfortunately mined in very depressing ways. To just be blunt about it, there are a lot of children mining crystals. It's sad, and it's cheap labor for those type of industries. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but it's also very interesting how, if it's done right, how they're mined and how they're cured and how they're, cut and designed. A lot of the case, there's fakes, but also a good majority of the case, it's real, and they just kind of ruin it by cutting it into a heart, a skull, or any of this weird stuff that is just gimmicky versus keeping the original formation that nature provided for it.
Yeah, Scoop, I'll jump into there, because that's actually a really good point that you make, in that you should really source where they're coming from. This is something I used to do in my local shops, where if you have, off to the left, you'll see, which is actually a pretty cool phenomena. This is a naturally occurring Lemurian seed crystal garden in Brazil. So these things grow right out of the grass almost. It's
That's
really, really.
crazy.
But regardless, the process of crystal mining is a dirty one. It involves getting your hands in mud, dirt, etc., clawing things out, which are very beautiful, by the way. That's what Scuba was talking about, is that the essence of a raw crystal is powerful. That's why I highly recommend, if you're an aesthetics person and you want a crystal that actually is infused with really, really powerful energy, look no further than a raw, unrefined crystal.
Yep.
This just means that they clean it up and they leave it just as nature gifted it to us, which is a powerful thing, because there's also, I know a few states, like in Arkansas, you can go crystal digging. They're really well known for their crystal quartz, but there's different sites all over where you can just do it yourself, which I think is super powerful. But to the regard, I'm sorry, go for it.
that's a very good point on how powerful that is, because if you really think about it, that's in itself its own ritual, because you're basically, you're going out, you're finding your crystal. Like, I'm just going to connect this to Star Wars. Every Jedi has to go out and find their lightsaber's kyber crystal, regardless of what color it is. They have to find theirs. So it's fascinating that there are places that allow you to do that, because in a sense, it may just be, okay, you're going out to a fun little gimmicky adventure, but in hindsight, you're connecting with an energetic first density type being that you are mining from its greater its greater, hive mind, light, frozen in light consciousness, to take a piece of it home for yourself to either sit on your desk or utilize as a tool. I mean, that's powerful if you really think about it.
I do also, because I do. This is where I, kind of jumped the line, but I am a sucker for spheres. I love spherical crystals. So what I will say is that it's all intention. If you're just getting something, as Scuba said earlier, a crystal shaped into a butterfly, right? Some very gimmicky stuff, or a heart or something like that, that doesn't necessarily aid the crystal's ability to produce energy in the intended way, then it's going to be more or less a knickknack. It's not going to be something that you're going to always use. But as you're seeing below, these are examples of raw crystals. And I don't know if you knew this, Scuba and friends, but my very first crystal was a raw obsidian chunk, just like the one you're seeing in the top row. So if it's brand new to you, go explore raw. I mean, you really want to start with something directly made from the earth, but these are the amazing, crazy shapes that crystals naturally take on, which I find absolutely fascinating.
I found this outside, I think. Yeah, I was at one of my golf course jobs, and this was just outside, just chilling in the grass.
No, you're landscaping.
No, it was one of my golf course jobs. I've had this just since I got out of high school. I've had this for many, many years. So yeah. My first.
That's beautiful. And so basically what you're seeing in the square graphic, top left is raw hematite, top right is raw obsidian, bottom right is raw malachite, and then bottom left is raw. Oh my God, somebody correct me. I know this. Okay, so what's interesting is the one on the bottom left you can make at home in a pan. I'm forgetting the name of it. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating because it's beautiful. Shoot, okay, rain check on that name, and then off to the left you have quartz that was dug directly from the ground. So
a bit.
Oh, and then smoky quartz off, either smoky quartz or citrine. I can't tell what it is, but yeah, this is what it looks like, you guys. And it's really, really powerful just to see that. I mean, just take for a second and just look back at all these images and just say, wow, the earth produced that. And for what reason? To remain underground in that shape, that form? No, there's an intention behind everything. And I think it's super powerful to plug in. And also, Scuba, this would be a perfect time if you wanted to show that video of the cave system.
Yeah, I think that's the second video. Yeah, it's the second one. Let me get this up here. And then...
Yeah, what you're about to see is, I forget how deep underground, but these are naturally forming crystals that are the size of a house. Huge. And it's just absolutely beautiful. Again, they're wearing suits underneath because it's way too hot, and they have some oxygen respirators because there's limited oxygen down there. But this is what's going on inside of the earth, you guys. It's powerful stuff. Gaia is producing some marvelous gems, some of which are never seen. And actually, the interesting thing about this place is that it filled up with water, so it's no longer visible or visitable. So this is our rare glimpse at Mother Nature in full action.
Wow. This is fascinating.
So it's also amazing to ponder. If you think about this, think about the rest of the world. Think about how many unearthed caverns there are filled with these beautiful gems just everywhere. It's a whole different world.
Me think that I'm in Superman's birth world.
I feel like I'm in Krypton.
So just as Xenox was saying earlier, and also Scuba, we are lucky enough to be able to take home a piece of this beautiful world for ourselves. And that's why it's so incredible to value crystals for all they offer.
What practice is a crystal best used for, and why is this important? So this is going to go into a very interesting topic. Does Clara want to take the wheel on this one?
I know she's outside right now, but I will start it. I'll start the conversation.
Okay.
The practice, or shall we say, the purpose of a crystal is transmutation. This is alchemy work, stuff that we've talked about in the past. Basically, the energetic exchange between a crystal and its user is symbiotic, allowing one's energy to be elevated while the other one transmutes the low density, which is really powerful if you think about it. Say, for example, and I know many of you do have crystals, so maybe you can resonate with this. When you hold it after having maybe a bad day, a long day or something, you'll feel this levity come after holding or meditating with it for several minutes, maybe a couple of hours. And that's why even infusing your area, your space, your home with these things can really align your energetics on a subconscious level. So again, we heal ourselves. Crystals are the tools, but they are dedicated to doing that job. So whether you use them in the right ways or you use them as decoration is completely up to you. But I can personally say that each and every one of my crystals has received much love from me, practice, healing, cleansing, really utilizing them for all they have to offer. And then also gifting them energy, gifting them love, because we have to remember that these things have consciousness. That's what Tesla said. And if you think about on a very deep level, the consciousness of a crystal, it's very powerful to interface and develop a relationship with that. And just shortly, I'll just share my experience because it's so funny. I had this crystal once where it was my rose quartz. That's right. I had a rose quartz, and every time I would kind of like subtly feel that it wanted to be held. And so I picked it up and I'd be meditating, I'd be walking around, and it kind of felt, because we all have different experiences. Just as Scuba said, he felt a tingle in his spine. Xenox felt some resonance as well. I actually felt like the crystal was kind of like suckling my palm, kind of like a baby or like a puppy. Like it was very interesting feeling because it was direct energy feedback. And yeah, it's powerful. I mean, it depends on how attuned you are to your own energy, but you can quite literally feel the transference in real time.
That's crazy. I don't know much about crystal healing, so you guys are going to have to take the wheel on this one.
I could try and start it off. So actually in the body, there's way more than the 7 chakras that you see on the graph. Um, there's probably hundreds, and all they are like energy focal points where energy kind of collects. But it does have a meaning to it, and each focal point um kind of correlates with the physical and the spiritual realm. It's the connection between the two, energetically speaking, and that's why you have the main 7 chakras as the focus, or in other religions, I think Christianity, it's the 3, the mind, the heart, I think the throat, um, and a couple other religions have different numbers to them. But each chakra holds a vibration and a different function. I guess we could go over quick. So you have the crown chakra, the third eye, the heart, the throat,
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
the solar plexus, and then the sacral chakra, and then the root. Um, and each one, like I said before, has its own function. Um, okay, so the root, is classically seen as red, um, and that can be it's at the base of your spine, right? And has a lot to do with stability, grounding, physical energy, and security.
And we
Um,
won't go too big into chakras tonight. We'll dedicate an entire conversation towards chakras at a later date. It's just right now we are focused on crystals, but we're giving a rough outline for chakras for people who don't know.
so one thing that you can do is connect to a stone that you might feel like you have a headache, right? So you might want to find a stone that is connected to, let's say, the crown or the third eye chakra. Let's say white topaz. Let's see. Oh, amethyst. That's one everyone knows. Amethyst is a great one to connect to for the crown and third eye. Um, and you can do something like laying down, put it on your forehead, and doing like a breathing exercise and mentally focus on that there. Or you can hold it in your palm and visualize the energy flowing through the crystal into you. Um, and from my understanding, what that does is that there's an energy transfer, as Drunk had said before. It neutralizes negative energy and brings in more light and positivity to your third eye or crown chakra. Um, and as we stated before, that crystal is a more solid, stable vibrational frequency of the different frequencies that we already carry in our body. And each crystal has their own properties and traits. And essentially, what it's doing is it's taking that wavelength, that frequency, and uh, cleansing or pushing out, or however you want to put it, all the other jumbled mess frequencies that you have in that chakra point or your body that you've gained throughout your day, your thoughts, your emotions, things you've done, people you've seen, things that have happened to you, and just the energy around you. all gets absorbed and intertwined with you. As you can see in the picture all the way on the right, that's a very uh, complicated energetic field. So the one on the left is simplified. It shows the human body and then the main seven chakras, and then if you were to just see pure energy, like on the quantum level, it probably look something like that on the right. Uh, and people see that a lot. Side note here, when they do like DMT or different psychedelics, or heck, even marijuana, you'll see what do they call them? Geometric patterns, right? And so what you're seeing is quite literally that energy, that quantum energy that's flowing through all living things in the universe. And that's something you can even see in crystals. Some people who have done psychedelics and done crystal healing say maybe they've seen like energy or a light actually coming from the crystal. So that's definitely something quite interesting. But that was my introduction. Jump, did you want to go more into that?
Hi, I would like to say something about crystal healing. I would love to recommend everybody a beautiful book that is called The Encyclopedia of Crystals. It's written by a woman that spent about 40 years studying crystals and their influence, not only related to the chakras, but to your mind, psyche, emotions, everything you can imagine. I will put a simple example for you can understand how powerful crystals are and how they can help us in so many different ways, not only for spiritual work or meditation, but so many things. Because Dr. Marcel Vogel, who was the creator and inventor of the LCD screen and worked for IBM for about 35 years, he spent all his life studying crystals. And a few years back, I got bitten by some insect and I developed like an allergic reaction. And I went to this beautiful book because it's the only thing I trust is crystals. And of course, there was there the solution for my problem using basically one of those crystals she recommended for that reaction I had. And the next day, I had nothing in my leg. So that's how powerful crystals are. Just I put them there, wrap my foot with a sock, and next day I was basically cured completely. And what I want to explain about crystal healing is that crystals are living beings, first of all. They are alive. They have consciousness. They communicate with you. And Dr. Vogel, who studied the crystals for 35 years, said the future of medicine on this planet is crystal and sound frequency and basically back flowers. You know, that's the future of medicine because what he said is that is your intention, the power of your mind that can program the crystal, and the crystal is going to do what you ask the crystal to do because it's a being of service. And again, we understand what by what Dr. Vogel is trying to explain is that we humans, we have the power to heal ourselves, and we use the crystals as a tool of healing. And the crystal will be magnifying our intention because crystals are both receiving energy and transmitting energy. They serve both purposes as the Pyramid of Giza. So, with your intention, you can program the crystal exactly as computers are using crystals to store information, and the crystal will do what you ask the crystal to do, magnified with your intention, and also, super important, the purity of the person using that crystal for healing. It's super important. The crystal as a tool, the intention as a mechanism of healing, and the purity of the vessel using the crystal, which will be the person. Because if you ask the crystal to do something bad, the crystal will break, because the crystal is here to serve the light. And that is what Dr. Vogel not only studied, but he has thousands of published papers with scientific proof of all his statements. So crystal healing is a fantastic field to study, and is very, very more complex than relating colors and chakras and all this. You can do and heal anything in your body using a crystal as a tool. And this is a high technology that came to this planet and was absolutely developed and used in the time of ancient Lemuria and Atlantis, because these crystals are used by Arcturians and Pleiadians as a tool not only for communication, but also for healing. And all this knowledge was left here on this planet in that time. So you want to use crystals, you have to expand your consciousness and think of a crystal as a living entity, much more advanced than we think. That was my idea that I wanted to share with everybody.
No, I appreciate that, Clara. That was very beautiful, as always. You worded that so well. Xenox, do you want to say something?
I actually did. I wanted to touch on something she said. So intention actually has a really big part of uh working with your crystal. When you get more into it, um, for instance, my healer had a there's a rose quartz crystal, right? You can essentially charge that crystal with the intention. Let's say you want to connect to a loved one or a family member, or maybe someone's that has passed. You can connect that intention into that crystal, and then you'll feel their energy or their thought or whatever more deeply whenever you connect to that crystal. So there are many more functions that you can do with them other than just their innate uh, natural properties. So it really is, once you get into more of the healing and deeper practices of it, it's an art.
100%. So, as we have talked about a little bit, there are basic, benefits to, using them on a regular basis versus just using them to heal very specific things. It helps you align your chakras. It helps you access your intuition, navigate your emotions, deepen your meditations, help balance your energy levels, and improve sleep. Think of it as your own little natural NyQuil. What specific properties make crystals electric, and who discovered this phenomena? So, I want you to meet a man named Mark Cummings, a guy who got the very, very shit end of the stick in terms of finding one of the biggest breakthrough things of our modern day. Junk, would you like to talk a little bit about Mr. Mark?
Yeah, well, again, we have to look at some of the unseen properties of crystals. If you were just to have a crystal on your table or on the ground, you might not notice its complexities. But with people such as Mark, scientists that are really studying different aspects, some very familiar, interesting things happen. So, again, if you read through this, and I'll just read it out loud for everybody because it's kind of tiny. It says Mark Cummings, a physicist at UC Berkeley, studied the energetic effects of crystals. He found that when placed under physical pressure, some crystals would produce an electrical charge. Cummings believed he would enhance this effect by wrapping electrical coils around a quartz crystal. One night, as he was experimenting with various amounts of currents and voltages, something unusual happened. The crystal began to glow and ring. When he measured the energy coming from the crystal, it was 25% more than the voltage going in. He had discovered a method for creating free energy. Within hours of his experiment, his house was raided by the government and his equipment confiscated. So, again, if you don't know, because we've kind of talked about it a few times in the mystery school, free energy equals censorship. And there's a reason for that, because it will destroy these trillion-dollar companies overnight. But more importantly, Mark kind of discovered, and I'm not even sure if he's the original discoverer of piezoelectricity, something that Scuba mentioned, which is that pressure added to crystals produces a charge. And there's different technologies that use this. What I found also fascinating that's not listed here is that there's this thing that when, and Scuba, you can show the next video while I'm saying this, the one I sent to you.
Yep.
But basically what you're about to see is a little experiment, a very small, and I do say small, piece of quartz heated up. And when you see it heated up, something amazing is going to happen. And you'll see it in the video right now. So it's a little speck of quartz, and watch what happens. So what you're witnessing is the heating up of quartz produces a triboluminescence, which is essentially a cold light since no heat is produced. And this is absolutely powerful because if you think about Atlantis, Lemuria using crystals without the need of phone wires, all of this kind of very, primitive technology, how do you think they lit their cities? How do you think they did all of these amazing things? And this just gives us a little piece to look at, something for the mind to wander. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating, as well as the piezoelectric effect. And what's interesting too that I want to mention, for anybody who knows about orgonite, it actually uses the combination of 50% inorganic and 50% organic materials infused inside of a pressure graded, what do they call that? What's it called? The mold. Forgetting the name of the mold right now. I don't know why I'm spacing. But anyway, what happens is when you put it inside of the mold, it compresses and has the same effect because it holds the pressure. So basically, we're seeing that it's not just the energy that they give off, it's the energy that we can infuse into them and create even more of an expedited experience or effect. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Xenox, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so don't know a whole lot about piezoelectricity. I did pull
Do you
up
know what it
articles
is
here.
basically?
Let me give me 1 second. But while I found this article, I did want to add that piezoelectricity is one of the properties that they use in the anti-gravity crafts. If you look up the patents, and they have several of them that go along with that. Uh, Piezoelectricity is one of the exotic properties that they use in order to obtain the anti-gravity. Um, but here, let's see, piezio crystals, special minerals with electromagnetic properties, can produce an electric field. whenever they are mechanically deformed or subject to vibration, commonly known as the piezoelectric effect. Besides, piezo cells have small, positively charged particles at their center. This is small particle is forced to move and create charge whenever force is exerted on the crystal, and this electric field is able to produce a voltage.
Hmm.
And sensor is common use for piezo crystals. Once force is applied, it will create a signal, and now scientists are researching it to power green energy. I guess that goes a little bit into what Junk was talking about. It's used right now, I think, in small scale electricity to create electric charge. Let's see. Um, yeah, no, I think that's it for now, from what I got.
So basically, piezoelectricity means that a certain amount of pressure is being applied to the crystal for an electric charge to be made.
Yeah, pressure, vibration, um, any kind of, I guess, kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm. Like what the lighter does, it strikes the crystal, creating the spark for the flame to light,
Hmm.
and the button is just releasing the cap for the little lighter fluid. So yeah, Mark Cummings basically did the work of figuring out Atlantean ability and power sources, and he got arrested for it in the same night. And it's unfortunate. Why is this suppressed, and how can we naturally reset the course to utilize this hidden potential? So this is a very convoluted and complicated type of answer. But to answer the first part, why is this suppressed? Well, as Junk said earlier, it would literally bankrupt the oil companies, the power companies overnight. Because if you could just give this away and show people how to do this, everybody and their mother is going to figure out how to do it. Hell, I would figure out how to do it if it was just dropped on the internet. So it's something that, is very scary, very damaging for the other side. And how can we naturally reset the course to utilize this hidden potential? Well, you start using them. Understand what you're buying before you buy it. Have a specific intention and purpose for this crystal you're going to buy. Don't just buy one because it's turned into a new age addiction for you. Because at the end of the day, you don't need it, but it is helpful. Anybody want to add on to that?
Well, that was actually perfectly said. Awareness. That's what we have to do, is that when you're outside, and believe me, I've done this before, where I was charging a crystal at the park, and I had somebody come ask what it was, because it's like, especially when you have some of these really exotic crystals, they stand out, and people get curious. So it's all about planting a seed. Use them, just as Scuba said. Go out, practice, allow them to breathe in nature, and then also, spread awareness, talk about them, even if it's just like very casual, surface, normie level conversation with the family, maybe even some friends. Just allow them to see it firsthand. Maybe you don't want them to touch it, because it's also, handing over your crystal to another is a sacred energy exchange. But just definitely inform them on the power that they have. And if they're skeptical, or they're ones that don't want to listen to logic, go back to what we were talking about earlier in this conversation and show them the atomic structure, show them the power of these experiments, and tell them about technologies that they're used in, because that's going to spark their curiosity even more and potentially lead to their adoption of a crystal in the near future.
Excuse me. Sorry. Absolutely. 100%. And, to type and to touch on that, be careful who you give your crystals to. That's 100%, because if you don't trust the person wholeheartedly and they start touching your crystal, they're interfacing with it, and the crystal's just going to take some of that, and it's not its fault. It's just doing its job. And if this person has malicious intent, well, sorry, buddy, you got yourself a botched crystal there, and you need to go clean it. And it's fascinating to really think about it in that way, but you have to. This is a very delicate way of looking at the universe in a very specific way, and specific things that need to be done. And if you don't do it, well, then it's just a nice little office piece for you until you decide to take the time, interface with it, and cleanse it. So I know Junk's been waiting on this one all night. How can I best pick out a crystal for its purpose of serving me and my energetic needs?
You do not choose the crystal chooses you. It's like the Harry Potter wand effect. You go in, you're going to feel something right. So I'm going to give you an example. We're just going to visualize a crystal store, right? You walk in through the front door, you see all of these beautiful crystals, all shades and hues of the rainbow. But there's going to be one that you're initially drawn to, almost instinctively. You go to pick that one up. Feels nice. You hold it in your hand. You start to forget that you're holding it in your hand. You move around, touching other crystals, looking around. And by the end of your visit, you notice that you've been holding the same crystal from the very beginning of your visit the entire time, and that the moment you feel it, the temperature has changed. You feel a very hot, warm sensation. And for those who don't know, this is an energy exchange. This is quite literally a process of transference. It's a bonding, essentially. And that's why whenever we recommend that if it's your first crystal or 10th, you go in and you follow your intuition, your senses. What are you being drawn to? Feel the energies, because it can be very easy to just go in and pick out the one closest to you or the one that most people are around. But if you really want to subconsciously find what crystal is going to help you in your specific situation of life, or whatever energy that you need as a companion for that moment, then you have to go in blind and you have to just feel around, really know that the right energy, the energy is really going to synchronize with you, and it's not going to be a second guess kind of thing. I've had many experiences where I went up to one and I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful, and I totally forgot it was still in my hand, and that was the one I always walk out with. It's because that's the one you were meant to have in the first place. So explore. I mean, they're waiting for you. And that's another thing too. Crystal shops are everywhere. There is also the option of ordering online, although I don't recommend it as much because you won't necessarily get that personalized touch. There is divine timing that you will be led to certain crystals online. However, when you get your crystal, whether it's from an online shop or an in-person shop, the very first thing you need to do is cleanse it. And if you are fortunate enough to be near an ocean, go cleanse it in the waves. If you're somewhere in a woodsy area, you can use the dirt. You can do your own method of meditation or grounding outside. But it's very important to imprint your energy onto the crystal to kind of clear the cache. Allow the crystal to fully register who you are as its new owner per se. And within that companionship is going to be a major relationship that forms. And I will say, and this is kind of funny too, every crystal has its own kind of personality. You'll notice there's going to be a crystal that you use the absolute most, and there's going to be other crystals that need you at certain times for different things. And again, what's fascinating too is that some of the properties include animal communication, which I thought was absolutely fascinating with my tiger's eye, especially when I was away from my husky. I would speak to her through it. And yeah, go explore. All we're saying is that you need to be the kid in the candy shop and know that you're going to be led to the right piece exactly when it's meant for you to receive.